The media, very hopeful to make hantavirus a thing, as we discussed earlier in the week. It's not working, though. Don't worry about it. And the Democrats. I've told you, they're not sitting as pretty as they think they are this fall. It's Wednesday, May 13th, 2026, and this is news and commentary with common sense, delivered from America's heartland. This is Heartlander News. Welcome into Heartlander News. I'm Chris Stigall. Over in the Senate, a couple of the president's team, Secretary Hegseth, Secretary of War, went toe-to-toe with some senators on the situation in Iran. Here's Pete Hegseth with Chris Murphy, the Democrat in the Senate, on leaking information on live television, number 76.
Of their missile capacity had been destroyed. This public report says it's only 30%. Can you give us an answer as to what the real number is?
I mean, I would answer the same way as the chairman.
Not talking to this committee about the damages.
Validating leaked information that could be wrong or not wrong. Why would I validate what people may leak or not leak? This is not a classified setting. We don't talk about those things. And you like to talk about them on TV. We don't talk about them here.
I would perhaps suggest
of
we don't talk about leaked information here. I know you like to go on TV and talk about it. We don't talk about it here. That's how adults govern, Senator Murphy. Good for the Secretary of War. Then he took on Chris Coons, the supposedly moderate Democrat senator from Delaware, in number 77.
Nuclear program, which we knew came with threats and branches and sequels.
My concern, Mr. Secretary, is that you've achieved a series of tactical successes, but are on the verge of a strategic loss, because we are now negotiating.
I just think it's so foolish. Here we are in a committee in the United States Senate, 74 days in, and you're talking about strategic loss. We have the ability to defeat a 47-year threat of a pursuit of a nuclear weapon. We have more leverage than we've ever had. We've had incredible battlefield successes, and you're talking about a strategic loss?
Mr. Secretary,
disingenuous questions.
Mr. Secretary,
this is how you undercut efforts that could otherwise and are otherwise.
I am not your
effective.
enemy, sir. I am not your adversary.
Nuclear program, which.
Yeah, I'm not your enemy. I'm not your adversary, says Senator Coons. Well, you have a funny way of showing it. I mean, when you're talking down, we watched Democrats do this for years. I remember Hillary Clinton, when she was the pretend senator from New York, say to General Petraeus. Remember when they used to call him that, when the Democrats called General Petraeus, General Petraeus? And the surge in Iraq. Now, I understand the history of Iraq, so I understand we're sensitive to that when I bring it up. But the surge in Iraq actually worked. If you go back historically and look at what General Petraeus did in what was known as the surge, that is flooding the zone with more troops, more munitions, and actually taking control of the situation. Petraeus did that and did it well. And I remember that Hillary Clinton once said to him in a very similar setting, for us to believe that would require the willing suspension of disbelief. It would require the willing suspension of disbelief. She was saying that directly to a military general who was presiding over the operation that was devastatingly effective. Democrats are famous for this. It goes all the way back to John Kerry throwing his Vietnam medals over the White House fence when he came home and helping spit on his fellow service personnel. Democrats just, they've never seen a member of the military in a combat mission that they don't want to besmirch or undercut or shiv. It's sick, and Secretary Hegseth is deeply sensitive about it and calls it out, and he should. 74 days into this conflict with devastating success, and there's Senator Coons talking it down as though it's, some long-standing quagmire. We're not 3 months in. We're just over 2 months in. And by all accounts, Iran has been completely decimated. And Senator Coons is effectively advocating for them, saying, you didn't really achieve anything. I'd be ticked off too. These guys, what I love about President Trump, what I love about Secretary Hegseth, and you're going to hear it from KASH PATEL here over there at the FBI, same deal. He tussled with some senators. In fact, give me number 68 as we go to the FBI Director, KASH PATEL, locking horns with the aforementioned Chris Coons. Chris Coons busy yesterday. This is a different group of communicators. President Trump has surrounded himself with people who are as willing to go to the mat as he is and take on the premise of questions and volley it right back.
You attended the Olympics in Milan. How much did your trip cost? And To what extent did that help you carry out your mission as director of the FBI?
I greatly appreciate the question, Senator. As you know, the FBI and DHS are responsible for the security of the Olympics, the World Cup, the F1, the Super Bowl, and everything else. We had 250,000 Americans travel to Milan. We're proud that we stood up our jock there and had 0 major security incidents involving American citizens. And what we did was we purposely planned that trip around the Olympics because, as I mentioned in my opening, the top cyber criminal from the CCP was housed in Italian custody. While there, we were able to work an agreement, an arrangement to have that individual expelled from Italy instead of going back to China, like has so often happened in places like Serbia. And so we accomplished that mission and we kept it quiet, and that individual was returned to America 2 weeks ago.
Hard to argue. Those are the facts. So they tried to make it a little more personal, and Kash Patel and Chris Van Hollen trade barbs next as they try to make Kash Patel out to sound like a drunk.
As I said in my opening remarks, I really don't care about your personal life so long as you are able to perform your public and official responsibilities, which are awesome responsibilities. Multiple reports, including reporting by The Atlantic, have alleged episodes of excessive drinking, unexplained absences, and behavior that concern current and former FBI and DOJ officials. You have publicly denied those allegations and filed a defamation lawsuit. So today, as you testify before Congress, is it your testimony that those allegations are categorically false?
Unequivocally, categorically false.
So there have been no occasions during your tenure when FBI personnel were unable to promptly reach you?
Absolutely not. You can ask my entire workforce. They hear from me at every single hour of the day, as do these great gentlemen here, as do the men and women of the interagency and state and local law enforcement and the White House.
And so there have been no occasions when your security detail had difficulty waking or locating you. Is that right?
Nope, it's a total farce. I don't even know where you get this stuff, but it doesn't make it credible because you say so.
I'm not saying it, Director Patel. It's been written and documented.
You are literally saying it.
No, I'm saying that these are reports, Director Patel.
No,
and
unlike your baseless reports, the only person that was slinging margaritas in El Salvador on the taxpayer dollar with a convicted gangbanging rapist was you.
You know,
the only person that ran up a $7,000 bar tab in Washington, D.C. at the lobby bar was you.
This
the only individual in this room that has been drinking on taxpayer dime during the day is you.
Director Patel, come on. These are serious allegations that were made against you. They're in a lawsuit that you filed.
You drinking margaritas with a gangbanger screwing on video.
It just goes to show you
running a $7,000 bar tab at the lobby bar has been filed by your own office.
This goes to show
during the day. That's you. This is the ultimate example of hypocrisy.
Mr. Chairman,
I will not be tarnished by baseless allegations, fraudulent statements from the media.
Now, I don't know about you, but that I thoroughly enjoy, because that's exactly what Democrats deserve. Now, look, I can't speak to the character of Kash Patel. I don't know the man. I have no idea how he conducts his day-to-day life. That's neither here nor there. The fact that Chris Van Hollen is using as evidence for these accusations the Atlantic? The Atlantic? Are you serious? The guys that have been proven over and over and over again to be guilty of printing total hearsay that's been completely proven wrong. And in fact, Kash Patel is suing, and I guarantee the Atlantic is probably going to settle if in fact they completely made that story up out of whole cloth, which they've proven time and again they do. They love to print gossip, and that's what they do. And this senator is basically taking unsubstantiated gossip and using it in open testimony as a way to try to convict the director of the FBI. The director of the FBI then reminded Mr. Van Hollen's constituents and the rest of the country that it was Democrats who, on the taxpayer dime, flew to El Salvador to have margaritas with a guy that was deported. And the Democrats decided to make a cause celeb. You remember that? That was on taxpayer dime. And I think if you polled the American people, whatever Kash Patel is doing in the evening, if in fact he's even doing those things, which again, I have no evidence to suggest that's true, just an Atlantic write-up. But Kash Patel was correct to remind everyone that Senator Van Hollen goes drinking margaritas on the taxpayer dime with convicted gangbangers who've been deported, criminal illegal aliens. That was the Democrats' efforts. That was how they spent the first year of the Trump administration, was trying to make illegal gangbanging, rapist goons who broke into the country their cause. And I'm glad that KASH Patel reminded us of that. This is the thing that so many Americans respect and like about Trump and the people around Trump is the fact that this game, the old school institutional games of gotcha, using unsubstantiated garbage from the press to prosecute people, those days are over. Witnesses are not just going to go to these hearings and sit there and take it and try to defend and accept the framing of the question. They volley it right back. In fact, they're prepped and they know it's coming. It's a new day. And again, it goes back to why Democrats are on their heels. They should be advancing. They should be in a position where they're just going to swamp Republicans this fall if history were to be any indicator, and they're not, because they're a disaster. Meanwhile, Brandon Gill, a rising star, he's a freshman member in Congress and really one of the greats, I think. Watch him because he, without ever raising his voice, without any kind of showboating, he's just a very serious guy. Brandon Gill is now going to head an oversight committee in the House on institutional abuses. That is, taking advantage of your taxpayer dollars, the theft and the fraud that we're uncovering in places like Minneapolis and Los Angeles, among just a few of them. We know that J.D. Vance and President Trump's cabinet have started a committee to tackle the fraud. Brandon Gill, similarly in the House, and I'm really glad it's him, is going to be the guy to head this new oversight committee, and he's talking about that yesterday in number 72. Take a listen.
The American people are sick of seeing their tax dollars wasted and seeing government organizations or nonprofit institutions, colleges, businesses abuse the American people, and that's what we're going after with this task force. But what we found with this Ohio fraud scandal is that we've got what we believe to be billions of dollars that have been defrauded from American taxpayers that should have been going to benefit the American people. And instead, we're being laundered through a wide variety of shell companies that were acting as intermediaries to facilitate payments to organizations that weren't providing any type of health care. Ostensibly, this was going towards companionship services where we can't even verify that the services were actually provided, where there was no verification that the people providing these services were actually had any medical training whatsoever, and there were no caps on the spending for these programs. And again, this is billions of dollars, and this is what the American people are sick of, and what we're going to work hard and diligently to put an end to with this task force.
Right on. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And a companion piece from the Wall Street Journal today to that point. The federal government says it handed out more than $180 billion in improper payments last year, largely through major entitlement programs like Medicare and Medicaid, yet the program with the highest rate of bad payments by far received little attention. The Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, a COVID-era handout pitched as a way to support theaters and music halls, reported $10 billion in improper payments, nearly 70% of all spending in the whole program. Much of the funding went to well-off talent agents and celebrities. Although singular in the scale of its failures, this particular Shuttered Venue Operators Grant is a perfect demonstration of how politicians and the press encourage fraud and wasteful spending. That's from the Wall Street Journal yesterday. It's worth a read if you didn't hear about it. The COVID talent agent bailout. Read it. It's shocking. The tens of billions of dollars, I'm glad Brandon Gill's talking about it, whether it's NGOs, whether it's fraudulent lending, whether it's phony grants like this, your taxpayer dollars are being stolen. And you got members of the media chirping about, the price of gas while President Trump is trying to right the ship with Iran, and they care not a whit about, what I think taxpayers may notice that gas is $4 and $5 a gallon at the pump, but they also notice and get really ticked off when they find out that their tax money is being stolen. In fact, I argue that they would be more angry when they find out their tax money is being stolen. Particularly the citizens in this country who are most in need, who need Medicaid dollars, and they're being stolen, brazenly stolen by the billions, maybe trillion, probably when all the fraud and theft is uncovered. It's an outrage. Harmeet Dillon, another star in this administration. PayPal is set to give up $30 million in fees in a settlement with the Trump administration after the DOJ accused the company of discrimination using DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies in their lending that favored minority-owned businesses. Here again, Harmeet Dillon striking at the heart of the Democrat playbook, just like they did with gerrymandering, lending, voting, drawing districts on the basis of race. That is not in keeping with the traditions and the founding of this country. We do not elevate and favor people or choose winners and losers based on their gender or their skin color or their other identification. Human beings are human beings. We are all created equal. And the Democrats continue to want to try to lend and vote as though there are special subgroups of people that deserve their own special treatment and lending and whatnot. And here Harmeet Dillon has won yet another judgment against a company and this crap left-wing DEI. Again, another reason why Democrats are out in the wilderness. Speaking of COVID-era lending, they are trying desperately to make a new COVID. And I've talked about this. I talked about it last week, and I sort of dismissed it, but I'm going to bring attention to it again. They are trying to make hantavirus a thing, folks. You're hearing it, and I'm hearing it. The New York Times, should you have to worry about hantavirus? No. You shouldn't worry about hantavirus, but they are going to try to make you think you should. And the addiction to panic, the American left understands how addictive panic is. The American left understands if they can get the population panicked, they can control them, just as I said off the top. So I warn you again, do not allow anyone you know to spiral into some kind of panic and convince you that hantavirus is something we now have to hand over more of our liberties and freedoms and our personal autonomy because we might get hantavirus. Even the New York Times, though, has a hard time substantiating the idea that we should worry about it. There are different types of the virus. Lab testing has shown that Cruz outbreak involves one particular strain. Most forms spread through contact with the feces, urine, and saliva of infected rodents, including when humans breathe in particles of the virus. Outside of this outbreak, the virus is dangerous, but it's very rare, admits the New York Times. This is very different, admits the New York Times, from the early days of COVID. People may show symptoms in the coming weeks, but those at greatest risk can take steps to protect themselves. This is not COVID all over again, but man, do they wish it was. Fight this thing with all your might, folks. We can never go back to that. Never, ever again. No more masking, no more forced shots, no more quarantining, no more closing down churches and schools. Fight these bastards with everything you have. I'm going to. I will never allow in my life or in my community COVID madness to take root again. They are hungry for it. They know how disruptive it was to the last election cycle. They tried it. And I'm not going to, well, I'll just say in my own little corner of the world, I'm going to fight this with every fiber of my being. I will never, if it takes everything I've got, I'm going to shut every single SOB down that even brings up the idea that you and I should be panicked over a virus again. Don't allow it. Fight it quickly. Cut the head off the snake the second you see it. Because if it takes root, we lived through it once, they'll do it again if they can. And I know a lot of you are concerned about it, and you should be. Democrats, they're up against it. They're scared. They want their power back, and they're going to figure out a way to get it one way or another. If they can't cheat it, if they can't steal it, they'll try to scare everybody into it. Sorry, I get pretty passionate about this. Meanwhile, one more on this issue, and I think it's important too, at the Washington Examiner, a federal appeals court has grilled Justice Department lawyers over Congress's pandemic-era policy of proxy voting after Texas filed a lawsuit arguing that a law passed by a majority of congressmen who voted by proxy was passed unconstitutionally. I like this. It's a lawsuit challenging something called the enactment of Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, a $1.7 trillion federal omnibus bill passed in 2022 after more than half the House votes were cast remotely. Now, this is another important kind of fundamental, institutional, foundational principle of the country fight that I think we ought to have, and I commend Texas for taking it on. Texas is saying if we pass congressional legislation to the tune of $1.7 trillion, our elected representatives should be there in person with a physical quorum to pass it. And during COVID, we broke all the rules. Everything went out the door, as you well remember. It was wrong. This country was hijacked. And this is more evidence of it. We passed a $1.7 trillion bloated, pork-laden spending bill, and we did it in a way that it's never been done in 250 years, people remotely voting and using a pandemic as the excuse. You see what that did? Texas is right to fight it. We're all right to fight it. Continue to stand up and fight against this. And I hope Texas prevails. I know the DOJ's job is to defend the government here, but in this case, I am cheering Texas. And I hope the court says, yeah, we can't pass laws via remote. I mean, if Congress had their way, they would be voting over their phones and never. And look, I'm not necessarily against them not gathering in Washington, D.C. Sometimes I think Congress not gathering is great. But when they're not gathered, they sure as hell can't spend $1 trillion of your tax money. They're going to have to get together to do that and have a vote in the open air. So I'm sorry, folks. I don't mean to relitigate COVID, but it's important we do, because you can damn sure bet the Democrats are going to try to take another bite at that apple if they're allowed. And with that, we'll wrap it up. That's going to do it today from America's Heartland. Be sure to stay close by subscribing to Heartlander News on YouTube for each new show we publish, and be sure to keep in touch by giving us a like. Comment, too, if you'd like. Glad to have you along. We'll see you next time right here on Heartlander News.